Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital at the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Do you know the serving way approach to leadership? It goes beyond simply meeting current challenges. It aims for transcendence. This resonates with the core principles of servant leadership. In servant leadership, the focus shifts from the leader's needs to empowering and supporting those they lead. These methods, like personalized coaching and peer coaching groups, are designed to cultivate leaders who prioritize the well being and growth of their teams. This can lead to a more collaborative and engaged work environment, fostering innovation and success. What if there was a unique way to cultivate joy at work? It's a refreshing perspective in a world that often views work as solely transactional. By helping leaders tap into their capacity, power, and wholeness, there is a fostering of a sense of purpose and fulfillment in the workplace. This can lead to happier, more motivated employees who are not just productive, but also find genuine satisfaction in their work. Exploring how these coaching methods translate into joy at work is about creating work environments that are not just efficient, but also meaningful and life affirming. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics in servant leadership to improve the health of leadership and to leverage the joy of work, expertise of my guests, and how to unique the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, who is a servant leadership and joy at work expert. Please welcome my special guest today, Chris Thyberg. Hello,
Thank you
Chris.
so much.
You bet. Very glad to have you on the program today. And so, very curious, how did you ever get to this thing that we call joy at work and servant leadership?
Uh, well, I'll go back to working with and for my dad,
Okay.
a wonderful man and not an easy man to work for. And so as I grew up into my own work life, I noticed those leaders where I sat up a little straighter and my shoulders were a little broader. And I thought, you know what? I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I will need more skills and competencies and expertise, but I also knew that I needed greater capacity. I needed to grow up and into the next stage. And those people were servant leaders. I learned that language later, but what I saw was that they were using their rightful power with me and for me. And they weren't afraid that my power would grow up in me. They were not using their power over me. And I said, that's the thing. I want to be that kind of leader when I grow up. And as I moved up ranks of leadership, I was able to stretch into those spaces. And when I was done with a 32 or so career being a leader for organizations,
Okay.
I moved into the leadership development space to cultivate thriving at work, one serving leader at a time.
I can understand that, and that's really instructive to say. I also happen to be, God rest his soul, a phenomenal father, and I saw his leadership and how he improved himself, and he also became a leader and was really moving up as managing in his career as well too. So I appreciate that a great deal. So we're fortunate to have good dads, I guess, to
Yes,
say.
we are.
Very fortunate. I won the lottery. So this has been a couple of years then, since you're talking about growing up with your father. Like, what kind of changes have you seen over the years, and what kinds of things would you talk about these days in terms of joy at work and servant leadership?
Mm, mm. Well, let's go back to recent history. With what happened with the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly became quite clear that just showing up for a paycheck does not cut it.
Yeah.
We've had the great resignation. We've had quiet quitting. We've had so many phenomena where people began to see, oh my goodness, I am a whole person with a life outside of work. And I need to bring my whole person to work, to do my work really well for fulfillment, being part of purposes greater than myself, creating real value in the world that matters. And that I need to be able to go home from that, knowing that I think I've done a little bit of what I'm meant to do on the planet. Now, not every job is like that. And I will say right now, in the early stages of building my practice the serving way, I filled in gaps by working as a cashier at Target. And that'll wake a person up to when you are leading nobody but yourself, and it's up to you to create the meaning of your own work. Well, then I noticed that and said, how might I help leaders create those conditions and cultivate that sense of, I am bringing the best that I am today. And if I bring 1% more tomorrow, and if tomorrow's a bad day, well, the day after tomorrow, I'll bring 2% of greater engagement and commitment to the purposes of this work. So that's what I've seen most recently.
Interesting. Kind of reminds me of reflecting on my work career. So, the way I worked my way through college is I actually delivered newspapers overnight from 2 o'clock in the morning and 6 a.m. And that was a very solitary kind of job. But I did find joy at work, which is what you're describing. I listened to the radio all night. It was pretty awesome in that era. And also, I think it's really instructive to talk about the pandemic. And I totally agree with you that people have sort of reevaluated their place in the world, having gone through the pandemic. And now we're in the post-pandemic period.
Yes.
Are there some things that you can address now that people have adjusted or changed their view of work in the post-pandemic period?
Well, I think what's happening is that people are becoming aware of something that Robert Greenleaf, the father of servant leadership, laid out in 1970 with his book, The Servant as Leader. And he said the best test of a servant leader, and then he named nothing about the qualities of the leader. Absolutely nothing. He said the test of a great servant leader is, are there people becoming more wise, more autonomous, freer, healthier, becoming servants themselves? And he added, and are they contributing to the flourishing of society, not just the bottom line? And so I think that wisdom is now coming to the forefront. And maybe a way to put it that I think is emerging with the folks I work with especially, is that leadership isn't a thing. I'll let you say with that. Leadership isn't a thing. Okay, I'm a little overstating it, but so many people come to leadership as, what are the list of competencies? Tell me the check marks I need to make to say, I'm a good leader. But Greenleaf had it right. Look at the people who follow you. The question is, why would anyone follow you?
Right. Yeah.
Answer that question from within. And now you will come sideways at all the different competencies and skills. I call them apps on the phone, like the stuff you need to do the work better. But you're going to be addressing the operating system. Who are you? That's underneath what you do, how you do it, how you show up. Answer the question, who am I as a leader? And why do I want to lead at all? And so what I'm seeing that's come forward, and it's part of all my conversations, is it's really, however a leader skins that cat, it's more, can the people who are entrusted to our stewardship, that's key. The people who follow are entrusted to our stewardship. They are not our resources. They are not human capital. If they can say things like, I'm really enthusiastic about the mission and vision of this company. I clearly understand what's expected of me. 3, in my team, I'm surrounded by people who share my values. 4, I get to use my strengths at work every day, not be pounded by my weaknesses. 5, my teammates have my back. 6, I know I'll be recognized for excellent work. 7, I have great confidence in my company's future. And the last one is, in my work, I'm always challenged to grow. So I work with those leaders wherever they are, emerging or experienced, nonprofit, for-profit, government, all sectors, when they are at that growing edge, where more of the same, just pedaling harder and faster, is not going to do it. In fact, doing more of what they were always rewarded for is actually working against them. I have so many clients who just got a 360 that says, you're really falling short. And they go, but I'm falling short because I'm doing the things I always did so well, and I got promoted for these things. Right. And their heads are exploding. And then we sit together, coach and leader, to say, okay, so what's the growing edge that requires more of an operating system upgrade than just trying harder?
Right. Yeah, it reminds me, there's a famous expression that Jack Welch says that what he's dedicated to do is to eliminate bad management and bad managers. And I go, yeah, that's a noble goal, because often managers were rewarded for something else. I mean, typical salesperson, right? So they sell really well, they get promoted to manager, and then they have no idea how to manage people.
Yes. Yes, there's that they don't know some of the new things required. And there can be a very deep story. Why am I a great salesman or salesperson? It's because I've always been rewarded for being really outgoing and this, and I'm always fluent and I always have an answer, until I'm sitting in a room and I always have all the answers. And now my feedback is, would Chris please be quiet and not be the smartest kid in the room? He needs to let the wisdom of the room speak first. And that's kind of an operating system shift, where in fact, it's not just that I don't know some mechanics of the next level. I actually have to do an inside out change. And that's hard work. And it's why I, as a coach, am something like a midwife. You are pregnant with the next great leader you are. It's not my baby. I can't have it for you. But I'm a really good midwife as you do the work to give birth to what's already in there, waiting to find new ways to be expressed. And believe me, it's painful like giving birth, but like giving birth, there's a whole lot of joy on the other side. So we're back to joy at work. We're kind of living into our calling and the ways we've been put together, and then bringing that out in others. Yeah, that's joy.
It reminds me of the expression that if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Get a better room.
Get a better room. You know, it's a different approach than what a lot of people are accustomed to. Could you talk a little bit about what would you advise business leaders and owners to think about and consider based on your experience and what you do?
Okay. Some of my favorite growing edges with leaders, the first one I'd say is, we have to move out of either or binary thinking into navigating both and. And so it is both, yes, leaders need to add more skill, more apps, and operating system. It's not either or. That starts right with the leader working with me over time to move at their pace toward the things they want most. But then it also shows up, do I hold enough self-care with care of others? Do I hold enough emphasis on results and relationships? Mm-hmm. And the idea is that they're both important, but we naturally kind of lean toward one. So if I'm a results-driven kind of leader,
right,
and I don't see the value in that more relational, soft, squishy stuff, well, there's a lot of good that comes from being driven toward results. But there's a whole lot of shadow, unintended consequences to just lean all the way that way. But if I'm all kumbaya, let's all get along, and servant leadership kind of gets that bad rap that it's all about let's be comfy and cozy.
Yeah.
And I'm not attending to people actually need to see that they are creating results that matter, then I'm going to fall into some shadow of undervaluing results. And it's not a pendulum. It's not split the difference 50-50. It's how do we integrate both, that we are in this together to create real value. The in it together is relational. The real value is results. And that's just one example of many polarities that come up. So that whole thing about polarity navigation. Another thing that comes up is we are in really complex times, not complicated. Complicated is an engineering problem. We can math it out and figure it out. Complex is like raising a child. There's no blueprint.
Yep.
And so for leaders to know we are in really complex whitewater conditions, that's going to require an entire different way of navigating than when, it was a steamer and we knew we were going to go across the Panama Canal and end up in San Francisco. We don't live in those days anymore. The technical phrase is VUCA. The military came up with it: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But what if leaders could switch that to visionary, undeterred, courageous, and let's say aware or agile? So I'm in the business of helping people navigate that whitewater so they can move from volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity into a place where it's really, really hard. We don't even know what the right questions are today.
Right.
But we're going together. And the leader will step out in front. There's this great African proverb: when the way is clear and smooth in the day, the leader is in back carrying the bags. When it's at night and dark and dangerous, the leader is out front with a torch. The leader needs to be able to move from the front to the back to the sides. And then I think the last thing that comes up so often, I love working with middle management or, just into the start of the upper, to help them see how to have influence in 360 degrees, to be a great follower. That's another sense in which leadership is not a thing unless you bring followership right along. Because it's the ability to collaborate. And in a sense, I might be the leader in charge of this meeting right now, but if I'm following the wisdom of the room, and I'm following the greater purposes of this enterprise, then I'm a leader who follows, and I'm a follower who leads. And if you can invite everyone into that dynamic, that dance, well, there's joy there too.
Yep.
So those are the three things, polarities, whitewater leadership, and just that sense that followership and leadership are two sides of the same coin.
Sure. Could you talk about your expertise? What's the process like, and what would you do when you engage with a person who wants to work with you?
Well, going back to my dad, I often did some construction work, carpentry work, and his motto was, Chris, we measure twice and cut once.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I will back all the way up and say, the way I go about approaching even building my business is to serve first, last, and always. If my chemistry conversation with you, Mick, is to serve you and give you a taste of what coaching can be, I'm not trying to close a sale. I'm actually helping you experience what it might be like to work together toward the things you hope for and are dreaming for. And when we agree that there's a good fit, and everything is about fit, it's a trusted, sacred relationship between coaches and leaders, then We spend a lot of time up front with really great assessment tools, the best in the business, for helping a leader get, for example, a 360 evaluation that lets them know, I think I'm showing up like this. Holy cow. Look at how other people actually experience me. And that can be a pretty painful moment,
Sure.
but it's for the growth. So I have lots of tools I like to use like that. And then we design the overall arc of this engagement. Where are we now? Where would we like to be? Why does that matter? That's the question to ask so many times. What is important? And if you had that, now what becomes important?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say in parenthesis, I love engagements where the client came in thinking, I know it's XYZ, Chris. I absolutely know it. And midway through, it's really ABC. I'm going to get XYZ and LMN and a whole bunch of stuff in the middle, but I found the root of it. I found the essence. And so we spend that time crafting what will serve that leader and the stakeholders, because other people are paying money for this often. Maybe the leader out of pocket, but maybe it's HR. So there are other stakeholders in this. And then within each session, it's usually an hour. We usually meet every other week. It's a nice cadence. And we start with, what's the thing that has your concern and your care and your curiosity right now? And concern is, kind of what's keeping you up at night.
Mm.
Care is, what are you yearning for? Where's your heart want to take you? And curious is, I don't know what I don't know yet. Man, would it be really cool if I got a little clearer? And then we go with that. I ask questions. I listen on all channels to what you're not saying, to the emotions, the body language, the energy. It's amazing how that comes across in Zoom.
Yeah.
And we go at your pace. And at the end, it's, hey, what's really come alive now and clearer? And then what would you like to do about it? And I never give homework. What they do, the client and I together, we design their field work. They are like an explorer or a scientist designing the experiment in which they're going to try to take some of that insight in our time together and craft it into things they will do. And I help them figure out, when will you do it? How will you do it? Who's supporting you to do it? And what happens if you get thrown off? You said you were going to do this work.
Yep.
You come in 2 weeks from now and it's like, Chris, I didn't do any of it. My response is, that's fascinating. That's wonderful. What might be behind that you want to learn as the real thing? So they go out knowing what they want to experiment with, who's supporting them, their plan B, and above all, how are they going to, like a good scientist, make notes, capture what they've learned? And then it's lather, rinse, repeat. They'll come in the next session and say, here's what I learned and experienced. Here's what went really well. Here's what surprised me. I didn't think I'd stub my toe on this one, but I sure did. And we do that over the course of 4, 6, 9, 12 months. It depends. I find it takes a little bit of time to build the working partnership.
Yeah.
But when we go there, they're always, that's the thing, clients, you are always in charge. You are Fred Astaire, I'm Ginger Rogers. So you lead, and I dance backward and in high heels and a flowing gown, but I'm also really good at that as well. But it's always the client who is in choice, who leads. I may be sometimes very supportive. Sometimes I might challenge a little bit, push a little bit, but it's always in this kind of beautiful dance between us when we're together.
That's awesome. It's a great image to use. I like the idea of analogy of dance as well, too. You know, we have talked about the changes, the topics that are current, and your process. I'm wondering now if people have heard and gotten a little bit of your wisdom here, how would they get a hold of you and what would you recommend if they would like to reach out to you?
Well, as I said, coaching is all about a trusted relationship. I'm not the coach for everybody, and I'm fine with that. In fact, I'm fine helping clients find potential clients for me find some other coach if that coach is best.
Mm.
So start by looking at the website, theservingway.com. Check out the LinkedIn profile for me. You can find me, Chris Thyberg, at LinkedIn. Quite robust. And then I just invite you to book a complimentary exploratory conversation.
Okay.
It is not a sales call. It is, Mick, I want to get to know you, where the current pain is, but where the promise and potential is that is calling you forward. And you can ask anything you want about me as a person and a coach, because people actually don't know what they're buying when they're buying coaching. It's not consulting. It's not mentoring. It's not psychotherapy. So in that first call, just 30, 45 minutes, it's an exploration together. And along the way, I point out, hey, do you notice you're being listened to? Do you notice I'm curious, open, and non-judgmental? Did you notice that you got asked a really good question? Did you notice it's all about you? That's coaching.
Got it.
And then when we come to the end of it, if we're ready to take next steps to kind of design what that might be together, we do. If it takes some more conversation to establish the relationship, we do that. And if it's thank you very much, Chris, this was great. No, thank you. I'm fine. I've just had a fabulous conversation with a beautiful person that I hope will really go out and thrive in the world by leaning into serving a bit more. Because in serving those others, we really truly serve ourselves.
But that's really awesome because you're actually living out everything that you're talking about, which is to be that servant leader. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your wisdom, appreciate your background, and appreciate everything you're doing because we want to eliminate the bad stuff and embrace the good. So thanks for being my guest today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Delightful to be with you, Dr. D, and all folks listening out there, watching. I wish you flourishing and joy. I hope you find every resource you need to thrive at work as a leader and a follower of purposes greater than yourself.
Outstanding. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your time. Much obliged.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right. So, if you like episodes like that, and certainly I learned a lot during this conversation with Chris, and hope you did too. So, if you like it, make sure that you are liking, subscribing, sharing, and positively reviewing the podcast and bring more episodes your way. I want to thank the publishers of both Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, for their support of the program. And also got an announcement too, just awarded this week for FeedSpot. I was the top third podcast within my genre. So I really appreciate FeedSpot for noticing and also giving me some recognition. So until next time, hope you enjoyed the program. Until next time, we'll see you. Deus Volt.